Thank you very much for joining us on the Voice of Jobs podcast. And we're back for another episode. And of course, my frequent co-host
Yeah.
between all these different shows that I do is Jack Kelly, of course, is back with me. How you doing, Jack?
Excellent. How many shows do you have? Like, it seems you're always on.
Now it's just one, but there's just been very different variations of the show. And doing it live stream gives it a lot of different possibility. So people not only just hear me through the podcast, but they see me on live stream and I show up
Yeah.
at different times. But I don't do them as often, just seems as often because I do them in batches. So I'll
Wow. Ho
do 7 or 8 shows and then I'm gone for 2 or 3 months as opposed to every week like how we used to do.
Oh, so it looks like you're always doing it, but you have things already in the can, and then you slowly rip them out.
Yeah, I've been dripping out and then I'm publishing on the blog a lot more. So
Getting quoted all over the
right one.
place, I notice. Getting
Yeah,
quoted in
getting
all sorts of major
quoted.
publications.
Yeah, it's not a bad, but a lot of people don't know the hack is create content and people will find ways to find you.
Yeah.
As you well know, some of it I've learned from you over the past couple of years. So, you publish more than I do. You publish on your blog, you publish on Forbes, you publish 2 or 3 times a week on Forbes, sometimes 4, 5, 6 times.
Yeah.
So I see you a whole bunch. So of course it was natural to have you back on to talk about how the news trends it turns into job search trends as we discuss it for what it looks like to 2023.
It's interesting how when I first started, let's say, writing about careers, it was kind of backwater kind of thing.
Mhm.
Now, everybody's interested in what's going on, what's happening with layoffs, what's happening with downsizings, hiring freezes, job offer rescissions. So it went from like, okay, you're looking for a job, have a hearty, strong handshake and get your resume up to date. It just to now, it's very nuanced, very involved. Everyone wants to know what's happening. Everyone's a little nervous.
And we get to prepare people
Yeah.
before it happens, as opposed to, oh, it happened. Now let's prepare everyone. I think back in 2008, 2009, a lot of the content, I was kind of a witness at that particular time. And I was doing a lot more career counseling. I was doing a lot more one on one coaching back then. And it was, oh, I'm being affected by the recession. Now you get to tell people what it is, and you get to get a lot of visibility on your own, even if you're just doing it to help people as opposed to get attention. You're preparing people for what it looks like. Now we're not sure whether it's going to morph into just a downsizing of inflation or a downsizing of companies, which is happening, or if it's just going to be a recession. It looks like the recession part is kind of starting to take a left turn and doing a U-turn. I don't know what it looks like from your end, but I guess from the news I've heard this past week that inflation is it's gone down a bit since October. So no telling what it's going to look like in February or March.
I'm so glad you invited me on to have this conversation because there is so much uncertainty how it's going to play out. And day to day, it changes. Like, for instance, yesterday, it seemed, okay, everything's great. Today, I just turned on Bloomberg and it's market's
Mhm.
down 800 points. Like, what the heck? What? I know he was
Yeah,
talking,
right.
Fed Chairman Powell was talking about rates, but hard to predict. The only thing is, one of the themes that I'm seeing, Mark, is, and this
Mhm.
is going to, this is just my own opinion. I don't know if I necessarily have the data to back it up, but it feels like a lot of major companies are looking around and they see that their peers, their competitors are laying off people. So then they feel, we could do it too. So I'm noticing this kind of contagion effect where it gives CEOs, C-suite people to say, we may, even if we don't need to cut costs, they're thinking, maybe we should use what's going on as cover and we could lay off the low performers, put people on PIPs or other things where we're scrutinizing what they're doing, and if they're not doing a good job, we have an excuse to cut them out the door. The same way I notice I don't know if you notice this, Mark, too. You go to the supermarket and you'll see the prices of some things go up, you're like, "Why should it go up? Like, why would a can of Pepsi be now more expensive?"
Right.
Except maybe you're price gouging, and I don't mean to pick on Pepsi, that's just the first one because they had layoffs, so I was thinking of it. So then also at the same time, you like wonder, are these companies involved with, like, "Hey, inflation, this gives us an excuse to rise the prices," that makes it difficult on that side too?
I've said on Job Seeker Nation, I've said it on several times, companies are copycats, especially
Yes.
the tech companies. They always copy whatever the trend. So two or three start. There's always the ones that are trigger other companies doing it. When Twitter does something, when Microsoft does something, when LinkedIn does something, though LinkedIn so far has not. Now, I think they might be, we're on their platform, but they're one of the ones that, oh, you can work from home forever. And also them, we really need you back here. So it's just a very interesting contrast. Before it was they didn't go on layoffs and they can continue to hire. That means they're doing well. Being that a lot of people are laying off now, that it seems to be in line with to start to do some other things and maneuver because everybody's going to come out swinging at some particular point. When everything, when the coast is clear, when it's not really a recession, then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, was oh, we're hiring in these areas now, and it's going to be mass hiring. It's a cycle, and just continues to be on and off. There's really no explanation logically for it, except for if the competition do it, we should do it too, somewhat to just get attention. You can even argue that layoffs is the new marketing.
Yep. It does seem like I agree with you 100% that it's a copycat mentality. Yeah, others do it, so then you could just say, "Hey, I'm doing it too." And
Right.
also, you could avoid let's say you just have an isolated layoff. It's very easy for people to say, "Hey, I've been discriminated against. There's a bias. There's a this. It was unfairly let go." But if you just say, "Okay, 10,000 people go," Amazon and others, then it seems from the outside that it gives them cover to say, "Well, no, we're just 10,000. We're just letting go. We're not discriminating against anyone. There's no prejudice. It's just
Except
we're
they
letting lots of people
except they
go."
doubled except they doubled down and went 20,000 now.
Yeah.
So Amazon did. So
Yeah.
again, to your point, it is kind of business strategy more than, oh, we blew it, we're sorry. So it's becoming evident to me that layoffs is much more than just laying off poor performers. I can go find, why didn't you, if people have been performing poor for a long time, why did you let them ride this way that long? I mean, that's also bad business.
It does also feel that since the financial crisis, the interest rates were so low that a lot of these companies, particularly tech companies, they had like free money basically. So they and it's not just tech, it's all these different industries. You got they could
Yes.
get low rates that you and I can't get, and they could do it at scale. So then you could just hire like crazy. And then I think what happens too is that you start hiring, and let's say you and I are managers. Now we start, "Ah, I'm managing 50 people. Look how important I am." Now, maybe out of that 50, you have 30 who aren't really doing that much, but you're doing it for your ego. So you can say, look at, I have this big division. Look how important I am. And I think there's a little bit of that going on too. So they hired too much. And after a while, when now that interest rates are rising and it's cost more for these companies to run their organizations, you're like, oh, we can't really afford to keep doing it this way. We have to let go of people. So you go, like you said, full circle. It goes
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
boom to bust.
Yeah. I don't know what book it is. You might remember the book that suggested that really, if you look, get down to brass tacks in big companies, only 20% of the workers are really carrying the 100% of the company. And it depends how you look at it. It's kind of hard to look at Amazon that way because they depend on those warehouse workers. They don't pay them like they don't pay them like they are doing their share of the work. Being that really what people care about is my product going to be here on time? That's really the bottom line. We don't care about the innovation and all of that. We just want to make sure, is it here safe? Is it here safe for one piece? And that's where I can argue the other facets of it. But when it comes down to it, it looks like what everybody looks at is what their white collar worker force really looks like and how they're functioning as opposed to what the other parts of the company are doing.
Yeah, you've had a lot of really smart, experienced career professionals on recently. Getting any kind of
Mhm.
consensus, what people are seeing, what they're feeling about the job market?
Yeah, I had Robin Ryan and Hannah Morgan on last week. One of the things that was also being noticed, and I was going to mention it later, I'll mention it now, that there are companies that are hiring, and it's still a matter of parsing out what industries actually being affected by the recession and which ones are not. And what we notice out of the industries that are not affected, industries that are supposed to be affected are also hiring pretty fast and they're hiring faster. For me, after Hannah said that on the last show last week, I noticed and actually had a couple of conversations with folks. People are getting hired like really fast, 2 and 3 and 4 days fast. They interviewed on Tuesday. They gotten hired on Friday. And I thought that was pretty interesting where they're not really caring a lot about reference checks and background checks and a lot of things like that. So I'm looking at, are we really, I mean, that really goes back to the economy being so splintered. It could be poor in one way and it could be thriving in another, or at least it has the appearance of thriving.
Now, for those examples, I take it because I've been reading some, articles about that too. It seems more in the front line workers, right? Whether it could be a UPS person, someone in a Amazon
Mhm.
warehouse, where you just, especially during the holidays, you just have to hire so many of them that
Right.
you don't have the time to check, which in a way is a little scary because, like, if you bring somebody aboard, this is like a psycho killer, and you didn't do some due diligence on them, and we all know, like, kind of go nuts in this country lately with guns and mental health issues. But put that aside.
Right.
But I guess with those areas, you're right. Like certain areas, they need to hire quickly. But like
Yeah.
in my space, white collar, compliance, legal risk, Wall Street,
Right.
they take forever. They take so long. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Dude, no exaggeration. It could easily take, and I'm not even talking about a C-suite person. Let's say a mid-level
Mhm.
person, easily could take 1 to 3 to 6 months of going through interviews, meeting like with 10 people.
Do a government type of background check with them. They dig a lot deeper down than they've ever had before. They want to make sure that person coming in, there's a difference between somebody's going to get high visibility, like a CEO, where they're going to make sure that they don't have a track record of fumbling the ball, so to speak, very often, as opposed to somebody who is a white collar officer, CEO, C suite, that doesn't get a lot of visibility. They may not need as much scrutiny. But in some of the other industries, they figured out some of the hacks, and I said this last year, and I think I've even said that I'm not the only one who said that, by the way. I don't make some new
Yeah, take
statements
credit for it.
exclusively.
That was you. Yeah, you started it.
But part of it is some of these industries that have emerging technology and they're hiring quicker because they could teach people the job as opposed to, and I'm talking about those who are earning more than $15 an hour,
Yeah.
even they're able to teach people the technology i- in a sense because there are no schools that are teaching some of what they're doing now as far as artificial intelligence. They're not. There's no school or college for it. You either get the college, you either get the certification, and Google has all these certifications, by the way, if people don't know. You can get a certification in a lot of areas where there's no school for. And in some way to thread your way to a job, whether it be through referrals or applications of being in the right place at the right time and all that. So there's so many ways for people to get jobs now that if you're just looking and just applying and filling out an application only, then you're dismissing what's really good possibility to earn decent salary in the next year or two. And I'm talking about decent salary. Again, more than $15 an hour, more than $20 an hour. You can make that kind of money if you're stuck in that kind of time. But so imagine if you following the trail where people are going and how they're going. And that's why you want to use a LinkedIn platform, as we talked about in time, where you can find out that kind of intelligence.
You mentioned about artificial intelligence. Have you played around with was it GTP chat?
I had thought about it, but I've seen a lot of our colleagues have mentioned it, and
Yeah.
some have even written articles about it and how I understand a little bit better now how it works. And for those who don't know, it's an artificial intelligence bot and it allows you to enter questions or enter a request. It takes, and correct me if I'm wrong, it takes information from different places on the webs where this information is and consolidates it into document, into a resume, into a database, into different for almost anything. but it takes that information that's already out there that's some more prominent than others. Did I describe that right?
Yeah, it's mind blowing in a way because I wonder what the ramifications and how this is going to just scale. Where I played around with it pretty much like the second or third day, whatever, when it was released. And I was curious. So I put in prompts, how do you find a job during the holidays? And it's so wild. Then you could see it's like populate right down sentence after sentence what to do. Now, and then I put in what should you do if you're looking for a new job? Things like that, different prompts, and answers it and gives a good little summary. Now, it comes across cold. It comes across there's like no real warmth or personality to it. There's not a lot of nuance, but you could see where this could be going. And going into 2023, I wonder with AI, is it going to start creeping in to all sorts of areas that could either A, create jobs because people could get involved in that space or displace people because they say, hey, do we need you to do X, Y, and Z? Because we could just do it better with AI.
Yeah. I really believe that still AI has this limitation. And after reading a couple of books and reading a number of articles, there's nothing like the human touch. And it didn't usher in like we thought it would. We thought it was just going to be this mass takeover with McDonald's and just being able to use the cash register and use pads to do transactions. It has done some, that is done in some things, but I see that still Walmart still have workers helping you to get to the machine, and some people can navigate and some people can't. And so therefore you had to have a lot of people on board for it to have this mass takeover or but it doesn't mean that it's also going to keep up with what's trending and what's not trending as quick as a day. So that's going to be a very interesting discussion as we head into 2023, how people can
Yeah.
leverage artificial intelligence for their job, not just for their job search, but I think it's going to be great to advance your career because you could do it just as we talked about before. You got your cell phone and you can learn these things on your cell phone it, almost instantly just by putting in the right amount of information and getting the right type of feedback. We can question how relevant it's going to be to you, but depends on how you're going to be able to respond to those inquiries or those queries.
Yeah. And I think you're right in that it's one of those things where you have to figure out, do I embrace it or do I fight against it? Or do I figure out, hey, how can I use that, incorporate it to help with my career? And that's going to be, it's definitely, this seems to be a theme. The way it was embraced on social media, and there's so much talk about it. To go back to what you said earlier about copycat mentality, then everybody else starts thinking, huh, let me look into it. And then it starts snowballing and getting bigger.
Sure.
So I think that's definitely going to be something moving forward for 2023 to watch out for, or to maybe pivot and see, hey, how can I get a job in that space? What can I do? Do I have to be a coder, a developer, or is there the skills I have? I can move into this area. If this area is kind of growing and moving quickly, and I could be part of it. Let me see if I could myself and go in that direction. Um, so that's what and that's the
Absolutely.
tough part, but the cool part for job seekers and anybody who's working. I don't think things are gonna be static. I think things are gonna keep moving dynamically, both good and bad, and it's gonna vacillate back and forth. So it's almost as if you have to constantly monitor the pulse of what's happening and then figuring out what skills do I have, what background do I have, what education I have, and then try to transfer that over and say, "Hey, how can I leverage that and be the best that I can be and do something that I love to do and get paid well for?"
Yeah. They'll have to be transient and respond fairly fast now
Yeah.
because they're going to need, and whoever wins the race is going to be one of the quicker ones who's able to navigate the technology part of it. You could do that, you can stand out in the job market. And that's one of the questions we really wanted to explore is how to stand out in the recessionary job market. One of the ways I think now more than ever, perhaps just by theory, perhaps speed is going to be a critical factor and not just applying for jobs, but if you can we're using some of the intel that we've learned in the past couple of years. If you can go and find out before the job is being posted, that there's a need and that you can meet that need, you can really stand out and do well, even in a recession, and still continue to take 6 months at a job and learn, and then find that other job next. Now, people are going to think, but I thought job hopping is over. No, it's normalized now. It's just strategy. That's how you learn and get to the next spot, salary withstanding or not. But I think people have to learn that there's going to be a lot of caveats to this. So I think speed is going to matter more in 2023. That not just applying, but getting the information, being able to take it and apply to whatever industry that you're in, and then being able to create something that's going to be of value for an employer.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like where we're going is that with, let's say, what they call the hidden job market, which is kind of a term I'm not crazy about, but whatever.
Yeah, you know how I feel.
Yeah. But but to your point, I think what it is to say, "Hey, let me not just rely on the old school, go to a job board, send my resume, hope someone gets it," but finding recruiters who specialize in your space and who know it well and have the context that could get you in the door where maybe they didn't advertise yet for it. Maybe finding some career coaches and resume writers to punch up your resume, to kind of help you with your elevator pitch, to smooth out some of the challenges you have, maybe public speaking, so that you'll be prepared when you're looking for a job to really do well and not have to scramble. And I think too, what's on a different level for 2023, if it keeps staying the way it is, and just because we turn a page on the calendar doesn't mean everything changes. So the chances are we're still going to
Right.
be having layoffs, higher freezes, we're having high inflation. It's going to take a while to get it down from like 7% to the Fed wants 2%. And the way they're doing it is by putting cold water on the economy, cold water on the job market, and having people get out of work, which is so messed up when you think about it. Fed, who missed inflation, saying it was only transitory, screwed it up. So now they say, hey, we have to lay people off because we lay people off, then they can't spend money because they're not going to have the money because they don't have a job and inflation come down. Which, if you think about, that's nuts that we run our country this way. But that being said, I think to what you were talking about before, you're absolutely right. People have to make themselves indispensable. And some of
Mhm.
you might not like what I have to say next, but I would even argue that you want to, even if it's a remote role, you want to go into the office as much as possible, even 5 days a week, because in an uncertain time and where there's just so much change in the air, so much uncertainty, you want to be there. You want to be in front of people. You want them to notice you. You want to make yourself so irreplaceable, like you're the go-to person. So even if the company's considering layoffs, Mark is going to be look for that because like that guy Mark is in here every freaking day. I see him all the time. He's always motivated. He's always positive. He's always doing something. He's always exceeding his expectations. So when it comes time, if they have to lay off, they're going to say, hey, Mark, we can't live without him. But people who might actually be as good, but who have been at home and all they do is see him once a week in a little box on Zoom, it's human nature. They'll go with the person who they see and they know and they have a relationship with, because then it's harder. Because if you have less people in the office and you have to let Mark or Jack go and we're in the office, that's harder to do than just send an email to people, which is cold blooded, to people, sorry, we're gonna have to lay you up. So that's another theme I think you want to do. And you could get mad at me, and that's okay. But I fear my I think one of the things I have to do is, especially like when you're a dad, you do these things. You have to say things that your kids might not be happy with. But yeah, you want to go in the office. You don't do quiet quitting. Don't do acting your wage. Don't do cyber loafing because you're not fooling anybody. The only
Yeah,
time
I
you're
don't know
fooling
if
people.
those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if those things were ever really a thing as much as it was natural human behavior. When you start looking for another job, you're quiet quitting. If you think about it,
They
it's
just put
really
it to they put a term on it. Like they kind of term to what like everyone's
yeah,
always doing.
and then there are a few people go, I'm going quiet. When was that ever a thing? When you're doing the natural evolution of between this job is no longer interesting, they're not paying me for the extra work that I do, they're not noticing the extra that I give, the value that I give, or the fact that I've outgrown this industry and I need to move on to something else. You started quiet quitting, so to speak. So really, to me, those things aren't necessarily a trend except for that we have to talk about it because that's what you and I write about. But we're here for the conflict. We love the soap opera. That's the deal. Don't we? Having robbed it and had it, they agree. We're here for the fight. We love the drama. That's what we write about. That's how we kind of our living in the way that we develop. It's like the Hollywood gossip column, so to speak. So and so isn't cheating with those, then we wouldn't have some of these situations with art, so to speak. But all of that being said, yes, I do think that people do need to listen to the culture of the company. And if people are coming or not coming in as often, then they may need to do something to stand out, and going to the office may be just a thing to be seen and to be heard, know that you're there, and they may have all the tchotchkes and the amenities or not. It's a good idea to be there and make yourself be known, at least for the front part. Till you've created some kind of work that they can't do without, then you could kind of work from home and engineer everything else from there.
Yeah, and go back to the working, acting your wage, the quiet quitting.
Yeah.
Put aside the labels that they slap to it. I think it does a disservice because it's almost to me from the outside, I'm completely generalizing. I feel like boss doesn't appreciate me, not paid what I'm worth. So as a result, I'm just going to drag my feet and just do the very bare minimum to get by. And that doesn't work. It's like you're a petulant child. If you're doing that, you're not helping anybody, including yourself. And you mentioned this, Mark, that instead of doing that, say, "You know what? I've outgrown it." Paraphrasing what you're saying. "Yeah, I've outgrown this. I have to move on." So instead of being prideful and just saying, "Hey, I'm just gonna drag my feet and I'm just gonna do the very basic and that's it." So, "You know what? More than that. I have more value than
Right.
that." And if they don't value me here, instead of just saying, "I'm gonna take my football and go home," you can say, "No, I'm gonna find something new. I'm gonna find a new field to play in, and I'm gonna put
Right.
my energies into doing what I have to do to find a new job. In the meantime, if I can't survive by quitting without a job, all right, I'm gonna suck it up, and I'll give this advice to people. This is sound like weird, but you know what? Just you smile, you bide your time, do the job. Don't let anyone know that you're unhappy or miserable. Just go about your
Right.
business day in, day out. Don't get involved with any gossips or rumor mongering or anything like that. Just do your job. And if you have to go above and beyond, do it because you want to keep your job until you find another job. And you don't know how long that's going to take. So you want to hedge it. You want to balance yourself by keep working and making yourself very useful and needed, even if you're not happy. And then simultaneously, like we said before, you find recruiters, you find career coaches, resume writers to help you get that next job. And then you feel better about yourself. You feel your
Yeah.
self-esteem will improve.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with taking what you're creating new to lean towards your new job or new career once that's available to you. Start building your career at the end
Yeah.
or rebuilding at the end, and start to lean towards where you really want to go. Sometimes that means, in this when people back, if you need to spend your own money to develop that new skill or the new industry, it's going to be well worth it because your happiness is much more, which you talk about in your book, by the way, Happy Succeeding. But I think ultimately people are going to have to understand that l- just because somebody's not serving you the way you want doesn't mean you abandon it completely to the point your efforts are given. I think the aspect of saying that, okay, I want to take it in a new direction, this is how I can kind of make a hybrid of the old and the new. And they might embrace me, they may not, but I'm going to learn this for my future rather than to be stuck and immersed in my past.
100%, absolutely. And the good news is there's so many online courses you could take. Coursera, Udemy, on LinkedIn. If you just Google, online courses, the biggest problem is which one do you want to take? There's so many. So yeah,
There are
it's an investment
so
in
many.
yourself, investing
Yeah.
in yourself for your
And
own future.
they're not expensive.
Yeah.
They're not really, they're not expensive. They're not college tuition
Right.
expensive. We'll put it that way. But there is going to be an investment. And if the company doesn't want to use you and your new skills, volunteer to somebody that would love to use those skills and use it there. Try to get, and the best thing you could probably get out of it is not particularly the pay, but for the fact that they can verify and vouch and give you a reference saying that, yeah, this person used this new skill in the way that we like. This is how this person added value. and it looks like a job as to the company, the nonprofit, the profit, or whatever. For them, it's something that they can leverage to move forward with their company. So there's a lot of ways to kind of play with two jump ropes and double dutch, so to speak, rather than to just be in the one lane where I'm stuck and I'm just adding value, but it's still not going anywhere. Please, by all means, if companies are not the employers that you're working for, isn't recognizing the good work that you do, then go somewhere where you are. Just do it strategically and not haphazardly or emotionally, like a lot of people have done, that they will quit and all those things and act their age. Those ultimately are they don't get you anywhere within themselves.
The
Oh, I believe.
strategic part is brilliant. That I agree wholeheartedly. Going into 2023, now's the time to put a game plan together because it's so easy to say, I want to do X. But,
Yeah,
okay, you wanna do it, how are you gonna get there? What are you gonna do? So you need to have this game plan. It's let's say you're fielding a football team, and you just stand there and like, "Hey, what's the plan?" "Oh, just get open." It's not really a plan. That's like, we gotta have a
right.
strategy. So you have a
Exactly.
strategy and like, "All right, maybe on Monday, I'm gonna be searching for jobs." And I'm making this up off the top of my head. On Tuesday, I'm gonna reach out to recruiters
Right.
and set up meetings. On Wednesday, I'm gonna do this. You have it set and that you can really go and each day incrementally you get something done, you move on, you feel good about it, and you keep making progress. And this is the time to do it. It's even though there's holidays and you're
Yes.
busy and doing stuff, put aside a little time to start focusing. What do I want to do next? What kind of job do I want? What kind of career? Do I want to pivot? Do I want to reinvent myself? And what skills do I need to learn? What accreditations? And go for it. And that should be a gift to
Yeah,
yourself. Yeah, this is we
absolutely.
live longer nowadays, God willing. Mark, you and I lived to our 80s or 90s. Seriously, when we were kids, that was like, I wouldn't have believed it. But now, think about it. How many people do you see in Congress and business people were 70s and 80s and still going strong? So you want to,
Yeah.
you owe it to yourself, especially if you're 20s and 30s. You got a lot of time left. So give it,
Got tons of
so invest
time.
in yourself.
Yep. And 65, I'm in my 60s. And really, for me, the learning is just
Well,
beginning.
you good. I didn't know
The,
that.
the book of it. Yes, sir. I
I
am.
would say
I
about 50.
am in my 60s.
I would say 45, 47.
It's pretty generous of you, sir. Ultimately, I am in my 60s. But I'm having more fun than I ever had. As long as I keep up having new toys and there's new wrinkles to job searching careers, I'm all the way in. So I'm loving this part now. Like I said, the more there's squabbling between companies and employees and employers, I, hey, this is what I'm here for. I'm here like awesome columnist. It's here when somebody breaks up. Now, I
Can
love writing
can I
about
put it in a
because it
different can I
has
put it in a different perspective than Goss because
okay,
more high end?
okay,
So I think what you're doing is this is more high end. There's this guy, I'll say Albert Brooks, but I'm not sure if that's his right name. I'm spacing on his first name, and I apologize.
uh,
He's a professor at Harvard, and
filmmaker.
he
Okay,
runs a happiness class, and he
okay,
teaches people how to be happy, but the way he got there is that he worked in companies, he was an executive, all that kinda stuff, and then he reached a
mhm,
point where he realized, I'm at s I'll make up a number, I don't know what he's let's say he was at 48 or 50. He's like, "I don't have the energy that I used to have, and my mental acuity is not what it used to be, and I don't think I can keep and I don't have the heart to keep doing what I've been doing." So he realized, "I have to change and do something different." So what he did, he said, "I'm gonna pivot, and instead of just hanging it up, I really enjoyed my career. I'm gonna be that elder statesperson, and I'm gonna offer advice and guidance and write about things that people could learn from, do videos that they could learn from, and be an educator." So in a way, it kinda sounds like what you're doing. You're saying, "Hey, I have so much wisdom to impart to people." And this is where you get a lot of joy to say, I've accumulated all these knowledges, what worked, what didn't work, failures, successes, that now I'm in the space, Mark, like you're in the space. So it's not custom, it's more like I'm giving value to people so they can learn from what the older generation messed up and what they learned from so you don't have to do it all over again and make the same mistakes.
yeah. And I think one of the things also trending in 2023, we also have to value the next generation as much as we do the older generation because they're teaching us that if you don't ask, you won't get. If I
It's
were to
true,
break it all
yes.
down, if you don't ask, you don't get. if you don't step out, you won't know. And they were doing the things in the past few years that we were afraid to do for the sake of how it may look to the employer or whether it will put a wrinkle. First of all, with your relationship with your employer, it's not going to go well at some particular point. There's going to be a time where there's not going to be agreement, and I'm not talking about where there's an argument, where they say that the people that we have now don't have the skill and they're older and they're not learning anything new, but the new people are coming in, so let's just replace them. But some of the older people say, wait a second now, we work with the younger people if you give us a chance and build this thriving workplace as opposed to just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, or maybe the older baby with the bathwater, depending on how you look at it. But all in all, that there's this that they can coexist. And it's just a matter of what can we take old, what can we take new and make this into something that's going to thrive from going on. Because really, I think as 2022 comes to a close, what they learn is that the older workers have more value than we thought they did because if they're able to step up to some of the newer technology, they understand the behaviors actually don't change. And I think the nature of people doesn't change. It's the same as they were back in the 60s. The propensities, for the most part, it's the same from within the 60s. It's for the fact that they are not adapting as fast doesn't make them invaluable. They just don't move at the same speed that the younger people are moving. So therefore, the perception is being looked at as being older and less useless, or yes, less useful. So I think there's that part of it where employers are, I think they're beginning to some degree in their thinking, from what I'm reading anyway, in some of the conversations, that they're not discarding the older workforce as fast as they were 2 or 3 years ago, especially right after the pandemic.
I think with the older folks, sometimes what happens is you have this not necessarily ageism, it's a confluence of maybe being a certain year, but making a certain amount of money. And then it becomes easy to say, hey, Jack and Mark have been doing this 25 years, they're making 250,000. But if we get a Gen Z or a younger millennial and we could pay them 70,000, we just saved a lot of money. Let's do that. So that's a tough part for age group. And
That is one part of it, but I think another part of it as well is that if so and so does retire, he takes with him that wealth of knowledge. Maybe we need to keep him on in some capacity, maybe not at a full time capacity, but do we lose out on this wealth of knowledge that's walking out the door? Because they know the organization, they know how to move within the organization, and they have all these different contacts outside the organization. Why not leverage both of them? That's kind of is start to speak into the way we want people to behave. But I think what ends up is the people start to miss what other people bought table for years that they used to. That's valuable. And again, what older people really know, they understand is that the nature of people and the way they behave, they haven't changed. The toys they play with and tools that they use have changed. And perhaps the way that they're able to communicate and reach across different platforms have changed. But really, the behavior you appreciate the guy that's able to add value no matter what the situation is because that's how they've operated all these years.
you're so right.
So I don't know.
Yeah. You're so right. It's like even in just outside the business context, and you have these people who they there's might be getting this wrong, but there's I think a Yiddish word for it, altakaka. Like I remember where growing up, you have these older people, and when you would speak to them, like they would have so much wisdom, would have
Yeah.
so much, like you said, so much historical knowledge. And there's a lot of value to that because you like to think, oh, we're going through this and no one has ever gone through this before. But you speak to someone who's, of a certain vintage of years, they've been through it 10 times over and they could kind of view, hey, here's what it is and here's what to expect. Here's what's going on. So in the business context too, you want that. Because when you get rid of those folks, you lose all that knowledge, all that historical knowledge, and that's a big gap.
It is a huge gap, and I think other countries don't discard their older workers like America does.
Yeah,
I think they yeah. Now I don't know how I'd be interested in reading, and probably I'll pick up a book or something during the holidays. How other countries look at older workers, but I think they tend to value them more than they do in America. In America, it's about Social Security and Medicare
yeah,
when it comes to retirement. Eh, but a lot of people these days now get to those where you
right.
67, where you can still collect Social Security and make as much as you want and have Medicare. They can still be useful for somebody to go retire and let the sun go down. That's their choice. But a lot less of them are beginning to do that now because really we are in a pretty exciting time now where the turbulence is really keeps up our energy source. And I'm interested in actually how this is going to morph into the 70s, 80s. We're able to stay healthier longer. We know a lot of the cheat codes to health now more than ever, finding more about the health benefits of eating a whole lot less sugar than we did than in the past. Why not take advantage of that and be useful and be on the part of innovation rather than being a part of its past?
Yeah, and a couple of themes from that is that it shows different careers so that if people live longer, maybe if somebody is into a career in health or physical therapy or what have you, might be fast growing areas because people are living longer. So they need therapists and such. Also, given what just happened with FTX and Sam Bankman Fried and the whole
Mhm.
crypto collapse, it also makes people you have to open your eyes when you go and interview for a job. Just because a company has a big brand name and they have splashy commercials and they have Tom Brady saying, "Hey, this is great."
Mhm.
It's one of the lessons learned of many is that you have to do your own homework and your own due diligence. You just can't trust because you have some company, such and such company. Oh my God, it's this company. I can't believe I'm interviewing. This is great. Could be, but it could be the next FTX, so it makes sense, or the next Enron. So ta y you have to spend some time really digging deep into it, and kinda easier now because you just Google it, you kinda look at their financial statements, you could look on LinkedIn to see how many people are turning over, quitting and leaving. You could find if you know anybody at the company that you're really excited about, see if there's an insider who could fill you in on what's going on over there. So, I think moving forward it would be malpractice for somebody to interview and not really do some homework to see what's going on. Just because it has a good name doesn't mean it's a great company. And then once you interview, and this is tough to do, admittedly, this is tough to do. You have to ask those difficult questions. You can't say, "Hey, do you have any questions for me?" It's awkward, I get it, for people who are looking for a job and watching this, listening to us. I know it's not easy to turn around and say, let's say Mark's the boss and say, "Can you tell me about do you have any layoffs plans? How many people have you laid off? If you laid them off, what did you do? Did you tell them in person? You send an email?" Things of that nature just to get a vibe check of what's the culture like, what are the people like, or what are you gonna walk into? Is it good or is it a hornet's nest?
Yeah, and I'm glad we're doubling down as far as topics concerned, doing due diligence because there are a lot of people who don't do that due diligence. I think what is they have to know a lot of different little things instead of knowing the company that they're want to interview with, that they study that deeply,
Yeah,
not just superficially of several different companies they're interested in, or whether they even narrow it down to companies as opposed to say, I want this job that may look good or this salary that might look good. I think that's haphazard. I think people are doing a disservice to themselves in the past. I mean, they're still doing it that way. It provides so much intel about a company, a lot more than you can get from the website. Like you can go and find out and put faces and names to people who have the
yeah.
positions that you want, and then connect with those people and doing it over a period of time instead of just asking, "Hey, could you refer me or can you give me more information?" Or all these quick anecdotes if they're really interested in, and really take a look at how they communicate even over time. And you get a few of them in their network, you can look to see how they're posting if they're not posting pictures, or if they're posting pictures, or if they're grateful, or if they're not grateful, or if they are saying something about the company that they're really in a cryptic kind of way, you can get an idea what that culture is like. But the more you do research about it, and I think interviewers are more savvier too these days, that they're asking, so what have you learned about the company? You can't go, I don't know anything about the company. Pretty much that says that you don't care about the company, which you've got to go into now. You have to care about the company that you work for, not probably in an emotional, sentimental kind of way, but you care about how you can help that company thrive and have that company win, and finding out what that company considers thriving and winning is, and defining that for sure, and not just guessing not just thinking that you'll fulfill this role and they'll pay you a paycheck. You have to really care, okay, this is how this company went. How can I help them win it according to what
Absolutely.
they think the winning is, as opposed to what you think it is?
What do you think also going into next year? Any thoughts that you have that what people should do, should not do?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts about how people can really do more due diligence in their job search. And I think one of the things you talk about using, but I think using a LinkedIn company page, whether what term you use in information or interviews or business conversations or not, I think people need to have more of those way ahead of time as they go along in their career, more so than just when they need a job or when they're out of a job, and start doing those, not just the industry information you get, whether you're looking for a job or not, is probably some of the best information you could possibly get. And I think even just informational interviews and joining industry associations and organizations is a big part of that intel. I'm really shocked that people don't tap into the fact that they can hear about job openings a whole lot quicker if they were involved with people and entangled in their movements, as opposed to just doing it when they need it. You make moves a lot more seamlessly when you're planning and you make that part of your lifestyle. I've talked about many times, job search is a lifestyle. And that's what I mean, is that they get a chance to, sorry, they get a chance to see it as it happens, as opposed to waiting for things to happen and then having to find out 6 months ago certain trends are making the news, and it starts to make people more aware, making more money. And that's where you want to be. You want to be where things are happening, not where things are kind of past. So I think people have to start taking a much more active role, even if you feel like you're comfortable where you're at. You can never be comfortable now, because 2, 3 years or 6 months, the industry can go down and trend downwards very quickly.
It's I think that's a really salient point, seeing what happened not only with FTX, but the whole cryptocurrency space and seeing then the tech sector, it was on fire in 2021, and then 2022 is like, what's it up to, like 150,000 laid off? Makes sense. If let's say you're currently employed going into the next year, to both try to make yourself indispensable at work, but also hedge your bets by keeping one eye open to see what other is out there, because you don't know. You don't know. It's still very volatile and things are changing.
Yeah.
And the Fed is still going to kind of keep cooling down the economy, which means job losses, job cuts. So you don't know. It could be you're at a good company and all of a sudden they tap you on the shoulder and said, sorry, last one in, first one out, or we just have to cut, and sorry, you just got caught up in it. So I think, and this is not a very cheery way to look at a new year, but it's realistic to
Mhm.
say, "Hey, gotta do both." And they're not mutually exclusive, Mark, right? If you think
Yeah.
about it, you could go there and be
Right.
really excited about your job and love your job and really want to excel and grow and be an executive there one day. However, at the same time, you could also keep a lookout to see what else is out there just in case. Nothing wrong with that, just in case, keeping your options open. Another term, career cushioning. Right? It's like career cushioning. So
Right. Right.
keeping the job and you're motivated about it, you're excited about it, but we can't pretend that life is very uncertain lately to kind of hedge your bets and cushion your just in case, have something else lined up.
Yeah. Future proofing is another
Future
term
proof,
that you
yes.
is future proofing your career. You can't do it if you are just completely consumed with the task of the job. You have to kind of how people are doing the same job, but they're doing it efficiently, they're doing it faster, and they're doing it with innovation. And as long as you're innovating, you'll be able to you'll be able to stay relevant in your industry and your career. And even things fall down or start to fall down, at least you know what the crumbling of the walls look like. And the paint chips begin to fall is not being replaced. You can go and do it elsewhere. But how can you stand out in the job market is very important. And one of the ways is not to be so involved where you are to the point to where you don't know what's coming up next, and to have those discussions with other people, what they're doing, so that you can still, again, keep the relevancy and also gate the industry seamlessly with different job opportunities, even if it's not some that are going to be more permanent than others. But I don't think people actually are grandfathered into positions anymore. That's a term that used to be used back when I first came in. That was a thing that you want. You want to be grandfathered into different roles because you've been here so long now. This is a natural, that kind of plan that doesn't exist anymore. You've got to find your way and how you can bring the value and know exactly what you bring and what's going to look like, and be able to convince other people that's what you can bring if you come to the country, and make yourself more or less like a free agent. You're saying that I could be valuable here. I could build this particular need and this particular role for this company, and this is what I've done to proven that I'm able to do it. So I think more of that kind of deep due diligence that people need to do, it's going to be with some foresight and envisioning. So remain on the side of innovation is going to matter more as an individual going into 2023 and 2024 or beyond.
Absolutely.
Your thoughts on there?
Yeah, can I add one more, yeah, one more layer on it
Yeah,
too,
sure.
and this doesn't
Sure.
get talked I think enough about in terms of people's careers, is that you also have to pay attention to your financial situation. It's if you're able to put away money and save money and have a nice emergency fund and best case, nice investments, what have you, it does take off a lot of the pressure because I don't have to just take any old job. I got a little cushion. I can keep waiting till I find that right opportunity. And
Right.
in this current and probably near-term market, you have to be a little concerned because costs keep going up. To find out get a house is really super expensive. To rent an apartment is really expensive. And you want to be careful where in 2021 and 2020, people buy meme stocks and all these crypto stocks and what have you. You just want to be more
Right.
careful and you don't want to be as speculative as it was in the past. If you do want to invest, you want to just the same way we're talking about a career, just be really smart about it and do a lot of homework and just don't lie and someone, it's going to the moon. It's going to the moon. Oh, I'm in. And be really careful. You gotta be careful about you with credit cards, with interest rates being higher, you could end up paying a fortune if you're not paying attention to
Right.
how much you're buying and putting on credit. So part of it, you wanna really focus on your financial situation. So on that front, maybe take some of the stress away so that when you're interviewing, you're not as worried. You're not forced to take any old job because you're like, I don't have any money. I gotta just take this job even though it sucks. I gotta get something. And
Right.
when that happens, then it becomes a spiral because then it's hard to get back to where you were before because you took a step downwards. So that's something I want to just put out there. And I know it's easy to say, "Oh, how am I supposed to get the money and all that?" I'm just giving it from a concept, mindset way of thinking to start paying
Right.
attention to that.
Yeah, yeah. Although you gave some great financial outlooks, this is not a financial show, so to speak. So we can't dig in deep.
Yeah,
We would have to have an economist to really help us foresee what it's going to look like in the next years. But yeah, I think being conservative in the financial aspect until you have a lot more clarity is going to make sense also and trickle over to your career and career decisions and the moves you want to make. Yeah, I think that is coming up for you that people should know about.
let's see. The other couple of things. One, could just relax during the holidays, which is great. And the other thing I've been working on, one of the things I've just been recruiting like crazy for the last budget time. And that's why, Mark, I'm sorry you and I haven't been doing as many of these videos because it's in a good way, there's just so much, just a lot of need
No,
out
it was your season. It was your
Yeah,
season for
it's so
this.
there's just
So
so much stuff going on that I figured, "Hey, let me just" it's the expression, "make hay when the sun is shining," kind of thing, so I'm like, "Hey," 'cause you know,
yeah,
because that's another thing for
absolutely.
careers too, is you know when things end, so if, like, things are going okay, you wanna ride it. You wanna be all in on it because it could turn on a dime.
Sure,
So when things are going
sure.
well, catch that wave and keep going. So I've been
Yeah.
just doing a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah, it was great for you, and I'm really happy for you. And actually, although I had missed out times and
We'll
where
start doing it
I
more,
didn't get
man.
to, yeah, we'll
Let's
start. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll have you on the show more
let's do
to
it.
talk about
Absolutely.
these things. Because yeah, we'll do that. And for me, everybody knows that I'm publishing a lot more. So you pay attention to voiceofjobseekers.com. You're going to see more articles than you ever. I'm like 4 months ahead, trying to decide whether I'm going to publish three, four, or 5 times as opposed to just once or just when the podcast comes. So for me, there's a lot more to write about and there's a lot more to also read about. So I'm also reading a bunch of books. So you've been listening to the Voice of Job Seekers podcast with me, Mark Anthony Dyson. My guest, want to thank Jack Kelly for
Thank
coming
you.
on, who you probably we're probably a joint at the hip in some ways when it comes to video and podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and to be able to catch the podcast, the audio version in January, this particular show. And actually, I'm going to trickle pieces of the show throughout the next month or two. So do look forward to that. In the meantime, thanks, Jack. And to
Thank
you,
you.
special shout out to Michael, who made a comment earlier, and to Christine for always being on point with making sure everything's connected and for you and your crew. And whenever we come on, she's always a great asset.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Peace and valid love. We're out. Thanks very much. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.